What does it take to transform a childhood mission into a world-changing neurotechnology company? For Dr. Ramses Alcaide, it all started at the age of 8, when his uncle lost both of his legs in a devastating accident. That moment defined Ramses's path. Determined to one day help people like his uncle, Ramses set out to become an engineer and build prosthetic limbs. But as his journey unfolded, he realized that restoring movement wasn't enough. The key was to restore control. And driven by this vision, Ramses turned to neuroscience. His goal was to create neuroprosthetics that could be directly controlled by the brain. Yet, in the process, he encountered a deeper challenge. Our understanding of the brain was still remarkably limited. Rather than accept that, Ramses chose to push the boundaries and change the status quo. Today, he is the CEO and co-founder of Neurable, a pioneering neurotechnology company dedicated to harnessing the extraordinary potential of the human brain. Neurable is reimagining how we live, work, and play using brain-computer interface or BCI technology to create seamless, everyday interactions between humans and machines. Their mission is not just to develop BCIs for the lab, but to bring them into daily life, empowering people to reach new levels of productivity, creativity, and well-being. With the vision of BCIs becoming as ubiquitous as smartphones, Neurable is enabling a richer, more personalized dialogue between humans and technology, one that enhances every experience with the full spectrum of human intention. In this episode of Neurocareers Doing the Impossible, Ramses shares his deeply personal and professional journey from building prosthetics to pioneering the next generation of neurotechnology. We dive into founding and evolution of Neurable, the challenges of scaling brain-computer interfaces, and his collaborations, including with the collaboration with Travis Holman and Miss Space, and the future of neurotech, brain longevity, brain health through the eyes of an innovator who never gave up on doing the impossible. So, thank you very much, Ramses, for joining us. It's a great pleasure and honor to have you on our podcast. Can you please introduce yourself and let our listeners know where you're joining us from what part of the world?
It's a deep pleasure to be here, and I'm honored to be on your show. Somebody who has listened and sent a lot of students your way whenever they've asked Neurocareers questions. It's really great to be here. Surprisingly, I mean, our office is in Boston, but I'm actually in Switzerland. I'm here for meetings with partnerships and investors. I feel that the more we continue this company, the less I'm in the office and the more I am like doing business development and scaling things out. But it's, at the end of the day, I'm just truly blessed to be working on my life dream. Even when it gets really difficult, it's still always beautiful to know that I have this opportunity.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And can you tell us a little bit about your product? I would like us to set up a tone for our podcast because that's where you are at the moment. Yes, your, I would say, peak performance at this time. Yes, it's the product that you are offering to people and which you have right now on your head. Yes, wearing it right here. Can you tell us about it? Thank you.
Yeah. No, I think that's one of the biggest parts of Neurable's mission from day one, which is how do we make seamless everyday brain-computer interfaces? And so the headphones I'm wearing actually are brain-computer interfaces, right? We actually don't build the headphones at all. We don't do any hardware at the company. What we do, this device is actually from a company called Master and Dynamics. You can see the little M right there. But on the side, you'll see it says powered by Neurable AI right there. And essentially what we do is we do the AI interface that enables brain-computer interfaces to work in a seamless way. So this is technology developed at the University of Michigan as part of my PhD work. And it really helps solve the four key challenges that I believe have prevented brain-computer interfaces from scaling. The first challenge is that if you want to record EEG data, you have to usually put the electrodes in the places that are optimal. So if you want a frontal lobe alpha beta focus response, for example, you want like a forehead strip. And that's why you see a lot of these forehead-based brain-computer interfaces. The other issues is that there's poor signal. And so you normally wet gel electrodes. On top of that, everyday kind of systems disrupt the signal. So even the lights in this room can mess up an EEG. And then the last one is that every brain is different. And so if you develop an EEG solution for one individual, it may not work on another individual. So we've spent the last 14 years working to essentially improve and tackle these four problems. And that solution is what we essentially license out to hardware companies. Our first partner is Master Dynamic, which is the one I'm wearing right now. They're these beautiful luxury headphones with EEG sensors on the inside, but we work with multiple companies. And in the next 2 to 5 years, you're going to start to see headphones, earbuds, AR glasses, helmets, really a whole bunch of head wearables that have neural interfaces inside of it. And then the operating system that interprets that brain data and enables people to build applications in a very robust and scalable way. That's what we do at Neurable.
And what is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish with adding those electrodes into just wearable technology that people can wear, every day, all day long, if they want?
Yeah, I mean, at least the mission, and we have an awesome vision video that really tackles a lot of that vision that I encourage everyone to take a look at. But really the goal is, how do we create this world where neurotechnology can be a part of your everyday life? How do we take neurotechnology for granted, right? There's this huge promise of non-invasive neurotechnology to track things like neurodiverse conditions. So think like ADHD, dyslexia, track degenerative diseases like ALS or Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and even in the future, control devices. And the things that have really prevented those methods from happening are the four problems that I described. And so our mission has really been, how do we tackle those four problems? And obviously, so we still have a long way to go. But especially people who know the company more internally and know a lot of the deep tech work that we're doing, we're starting to get there. And I can't wait to have this future where neurotech is just a part of every device you wear. And on top of that is a seamless experience that isn't fraught with all the issues that we have right now with consumer neurotech. And that's actually one of the key reasons why we started this company. I remember when I was in grad school, I learned about how, like I said, people were having these neurodegenerative diseases and not even knowing about it. And then when I saw the consumer solutions that were out there, they were too poor in signal quality. And so that's really what opened up the why behind the company and what we decided to tackle. And now our vision for the future is, how do we make that reality into something that's real, right? Not science or science fiction, but into actual engineering, something that people can build off of.
And what can people do with this current technology developed?
There's a lot that we can do right now. What's publicly available is that we can track things like focus and then use it to, for example, create biofeedback for individuals. Also to tell people when to take breaks when they're tired and help with brain performance. But what's really powerful is we're building, like I said, an operating system layer. So that same technology that we're using for focus on the Neurable Focus app that people have used, that same technology is being used by the Army to detect fatigue in soldiers. It's being used by our Singapore partners for adaptive training for their drone pilots. It's being used by our partner MeSpace to create customized environments. And so every single time we create a new module, and our goal is, as a company, is how do you create as many of these modules as possible that makes it really robust and reliable to build brain-computer interface applications on top of, and then let other people build solutions. We have a lot of other things that we haven't disclosed. The only other thing we have disclosed is our brain health features that's available in the app. It was started with a collaboration with the U.S. Army, where Right now, a lot of soldiers are getting essentially blast overpressure events. So shock waves are impacting their brain, and we can track the damage that happens to them. And then we can also track the recovery. Well, that same technology we're using in our Neurable health app side, where we can actually track your brain age, see how things affect it. So drinking, how sleep affects it, be able to track signals that are associated to anxiety, to calmness, to cognitive speed, and then provide that as a feedback, kind of like a Fitbit for your brain or an Apple Watch for your brain. Those are the two publicly available capabilities, but there's so much more to the platform we haven't revealed to the public. And I can't wait to start rolling that out.
Yeah, that is absolutely amazing. And I would like to start with the most simple applications for people in their daily lives. I was giving a lecture yesterday to my students. I'm teaching cognitive psychology this semester. And we were talking about dementia, about memory loss. And of course, the question from students was, how can we prevent that? What can we do to have a long brain health? How can we stay with our brain healthy until we are 70, 80, 90, and now the lifespan is expanding. Yes, so what can we do? How is your product contributing to that? Can it contribute? What do you think?
Yeah, and actually longevity turns out to be one of the biggest customer bases for the technology that we're building. So I would say from this master and dynamic product, two key areas: people who care about focus and people who care about longevity. And we're seeing this increased attention in something called Brainspan. So we have longevity, which is how long you can live. You have health span, which is how healthy the span of your life is, right? Because even if you could live to 200, if you're wheelchair bound and you can't do much, is it really worth living, right? And now we're seeing this inflection point of the concept called brain span, where it's how healthy your brain can be over long periods of time. Because even if you're 200 years old and you have a six pack, if you have Alzheimer's, it really doesn't matter, right? And so essentially what we're doing with this technology is, for quite some time there has been biomarkers associated to, for example, Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, for example, drops in alpha peak frequency or increases in data theta, depending on like frontal temporal regions, for example. But the main issue is that in order to do this, you have to be able to compare your brain this year versus next year and then see progression throughout that timeline. That's just not possible with current EEG technology, because you go to a lab, at most somebody might get an EEG once or twice in their life, right? And even if you got it once a year, it's the noise every single day is slightly different, and you're only getting one snapshot in time. And so once you bring something to a wearable technology that people can wear every day, like I have right now, this device that I'm wearing right now, you can actually track your brain biomarkers every single day. And I can see different changes that happen to my brain. And in the near future, we're going to be tracking some of these biomarkers associated with different neurodegenerative conditions. And while we're not going to diagnose anything, we're going to tell you, hey, you're trending in this direction. Go see a medical professional, right? And then that means that you can go see a professional, get an MRI, get something that's higher resolution than EEG, get a correct diagnosis. But our mission is, how do we make it so that nobody can be surprised by their brain again, right? And that is, I think, the powerful thing that an everyday wearable enables that we haven't been able to do with EEG traditionally.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. And it reminds me how I was using my smartphone to look at my sleep patterns. Yes, so I was tracking my sleep and then adjusting things. So you can see how deep is your sleep, how long those periods of sleep, in general, how much sleep do you get, what is the respiration rate, heart rate during that time. And based on feedback, you can make adjustments and improve your sleep, yes, which is very important. What would be the parallel with a technology that you developed? What we can track, what type of data can we use to improve our brain performance?
Yeah, actually, if you let me share the screen, I can show you something really
Mhm.
cool.
Yes.
So
Okay.
I'm going to share some of my
Mm.
personal data.
Yes.
And this is the early beta version of the app. Now it's gotten a lot easier to understand, but this right here, for example, is my brain age report. I get it every single day, essentially I get one. And you can
Mhm.
see my brain age is around 30. That's pretty typical for me.
Mhm.
And then down here, you can actually see different responses. So delta is usually associated to sleepiness. Beta is usually associated to like cognitive speed and readiness. And so this was before a conference called South by Southwest. So I went to South by Southwest, and instead of following my healthy patterns of going to sleep early, eating right, etc., I decided to start drinking alcohol at these mixers, wine, pretty typical stuff, nothing, significant. I'm not a heavy drinker anyways. And then I start staying up late. And over 3 days, my brain age starts going from 30 to 50, right? And you can then see my biomarkers down here associated to, for example, delta going above what's considered normal, which is this box. And so it means that I need more sleep. And then you can see my beta responses below their boxes, which means that my brain readiness has gone down. And once I actually start going back to my normal healthy habits, you can see it goes back down to 29, right? And so that's kind of like what I mean by like real time. You can start to see how the changes you do day by day impact your brain health. But what I think is even more powerful is that this time now we can actually see things associated to longer time periods too. So, for example, here's my week breakdown. Blue is what is considered my baseline. And right now we have this system called sick care when you go to the doctor because you're sick, right? What if in the future we could go to the doctor because we get changes from our baseline? So in this case, this red dot represents me recovering from South by Southwest. I finally go back into my baseline zone. Awesome. And then I noticed that all my markers start going crazy Sunday through Monday. So instead of, just continuing to move forward with my life, I realized that this is happening. So I go to the doctor and guess what? I got COVID, right? 4 days before I had any symptoms, I was able to detect that. We're already getting people messaging me about them also detecting COVID before they feel sick or other types of neuro conditions, for example, migraines, and other things that typically affect individuals. But you can start to see that by having an everyday device, you can start to tackle a lot of these key, questions about your brain and how you're feeling, even sometimes before you have any, physical reaction to what's occurring.
Yeah. And which brings me to another question that our students, yesterday we had such a wonderful conversation, were asking, can we prevent cognitive decline? So in this case, we would be able to start seeing that red zone appearing. Yes, and we can start questioning, okay, where is it coming from? I don't have COVID, I don't have this, I don't have that. Is something happening with my brain?
Exactly.
Yes, that might.
Better research, earlier research,
Mhm.
direct results, right? And maybe we're our goal is not to solve it. This is a measuring device, right?
Yeah.
But if you give people the tools to measure it in closer proximity, it enables them to do a different kind of science. And then on top of that, instead of trying to solve a problem, like right now, the standard of care for Parkinson's and Alzheimer's is 10 years into the disease. What if you knew it 1 year into the disease, right? There's that new Eli Lilly drug that if you capture it early enough can push Alzheimer's away many more years, right? It's powerful,
Mhm.
but not if you capture it late. So by capturing it early, we can push off these diseases for much later as well. And
Mhm.
that's really the capability of everyday technology.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes. What are applications that people are using the device right now, individual people? I know that on some podcasts you were talking about doing meditation. I think that was your example, yes? And you can look at the effect of meditation and even different applications that can help you to get into more meditative state, yes? And what works for you and what doesn't, because meditation is very individual, yes, and it can be used for different different things. So really to pick up what you want. And what are other applications? Yes, because people are inventive, and I think you are also supporting that creative approach to using your device, as I noticed in your Instagram, for example.
Yeah. My Instagram has so many crazy things: walking on fire, driving, simulators in cars. Like, yeah, and that's, I think, one of the most powerful things about bringing technology into the everyday, which is people can be experimental, right? They can actually see how these things essentially impact their brains, and we've had so many incredible individuals share with us stories. For example, how where they tested out drinking coffee one day versus another, or they tried different types of breaks. So scrolling on Instagram versus going for a walk versus doing push-ups or meditation. Like, there's so many things that people are doing that is really creative. And I'll just share one of my stories real quick, just so that people can see kind of like how I used it.
Yeah.
So this was actually the meditation story I think that you were highlighting, which is normally when I meditate, I go into deep meditation, which is blue, and then I get out of it. And it's so frustrating for me to meditate. You have no idea. It's like I feel like I can never really get into the zone. And then by the time maybe I start getting into it, I'm already out, right? And then I went to a meditation session with Deepak Chopra, and look at my meditation after that. Like, deep the entire time, right? And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, this is like, I guess I don't suck at meditating. I just need a coach, right? And so this was really inspirational for me because it allowed me for the first time to use data to feel empowered on my decision making. So I downloaded about 8 different meditation apps. Calm, my can't remember. I downloaded 8 different meditation systems, right? And I started experimenting with different ones, and most of them didn't work until I found one called Getting Deep, right? And that was the one that worked for me, right? And it might be different for another individual, but like I would not have been able to find the right tool for me because every brain is different. People are affected in different ways without having some sort of everyday device that I could literally check things myself, right? And most importantly, the data wasn't crazy EEG lines everywhere. Very straightforward. Am I in deep meditation or not? Simple as that.
Yeah. I'm very curious. What was, in your opinion, different when you were coached by Deepak Chopra in that meditation compared with the other meditations you've done before?
That's a good question. I don't know if I've taken the time to really think deeply about that. It was more my mindset was, and it's still usually the case, it's more of an engineering than a science question. It's like, oh, how do I solve this problem versus like, why is this problem happening? And like, let me understand it more deeply. I don't know why Deepak worked and others didn't, but I think just having the realization that I can meditate was really empowering, right?
Yeah.
And exploring the solutions for it.
Yes, yeah, I absolutely agree. So those are individual examples, but as I understand that you are also offering this tool you developed for research. Is that
Mhm.
correct? Maybe you can provide some examples how people can use and maybe already are using it for research purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many, from defense use cases to track soldier fatigue, for example, to prevent accidents, to laboratories essentially using it to understand, focus of individuals or track different neurocognitive markers. But I think the general theme is that this is the first time that you can do reliable EEG at scale, right? So, for example, we're meeting a lot of labs that would, for example, bring somebody in, sit them down, and then they would run a cognitive test or some sort of uh, session where they would have them do like P300s or other types of use cases like that. And they would have one person at a time, right? But now what they can do is they can have 50 people doing this at home, right? And so we're seeing this huge change where a lot of these labs and really they're coming from everywhere. I was actually in Kazakhstan like a month ago, and there was a lab that had bought like 4 research kits from our system, right? And I was like, wow, like I didn't even know that they were doing neurotech at this scale here. And so we're really starting to see a lot of these labs move to at scale, and a lot of our algorithms also remove artifacts, so it works while walking. So, everyday situations, gaming, working on your computer, going for walks to see how different things impact your brain. That scalability is really the niche that our technology has enabled for a lot of researchers, where in the past they would have to use large scalp systems. People can't take it home, they can't set it up themselves, etc.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. And how do you think this is changing in general research and the data that we can um, get from neurotechnologies, having the possibility to wear it and do studies in real life settings. What new insights it can provide to researchers?
Yeah, so many that we've seen so far, and actually, there's some papers coming out where they've published it. But the three things that have really this technology has enabled for researchers is one is they can do studies at scale. So right now, for example, if you did a study, you might do 10 to 30 people, right? We just got a purchase order, this month for 10,000 units. So imagine doing studies with 10,000 people, right? It's also now real time. You can literally capture the data in real time while they're at home. So, not only are you seeing how this affects thousands and eventually millions of people at a time, which is something we've never been able to do with EEG, but then we can see how things are affected in real time. But the most powerful thing is now we can see things that are happening longitudinally, right? So we can see changes in people's brains day by day, week by week, month by month, compare all that together. Previously, for example, when we were looking at individuals who had Alzheimer's, you would compare a healthy control system versus a group of people who've already been identified with Alzheimer's. There's a gap there. Like you don't see progression, right? There's a gap of information there that could be used to predict as a person is trending in that direction. Now, these are just headphones that you take with you. They're literally in these labs we're working with, they're just giving them to people. All right, have this, share your data, right? And then you can imagine over days, weeks, months, even years, we're starting to see that progression happen in between. What are different things that can be impacted? And that's the really powerful thing about everyday wearable devices. It's scale, real-time, longitudinal data, which has never been possible with EEG. I mean, how many studies do you know that have done a 10,000 person EEG study, right? That's hasn't happened. And that's going to start to become a norm.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. Let's provide a little bit of a perspective of how this wearable neurotech technology developed. I know that you started with the conventional gel-based EEG system, yes, back in the day. And I think you were working with people with cerebral palsy. Yes, that's where you started. And you went through quite a few iterations to get to the place where you are and to this product. Can you maybe guide us a little bit through this process? And what I am very curious about how we can still have a signal that provides us enough information about the brain to track all this progress, but with the minimal coverage. And especially with the just not so many electrodes and around the ears. Yes, we're used to having them on the head. Yeah. And here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, so 8 on each side. Yes, 16 total. So, can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, that's, I think, one of the biggest competitive advantages of our company. What a lot of companies do right now, especially in the BCI field, is they raise a ton of money, they release a product 2 years later, and that product disappoints people, right? We've taken a completely different approach. Instead of trying to release a product, first of all, we're software only. And our goal has been, how do we solve those four fundamental problems, right? And we essentially started this in 2011 using wet electrode systems, right? And the goal has been, how do we solve those four fundamental problems? And the reason it's taken us so long to release a product, even though this technology started in 2011, is because we've actually worked our way down to smaller and smaller form factors, right? From wet electrodes, 128, to 22 dry electrodes, to 6 dry electrodes, to eventually headphones in 2019. And then now, we have even more form factors. But the main goal here has been not to release a product, but to improve the technology so that we retain as much of the signal quality as we can, and still be able to pull out good data. And all of this has been done with advanced AI techniques that our team built over the last 14 years. And there's a ton of validation on the tech. We've gone through 2 years of Air Force and Army validations. There's also a white paper that compares us to this 22 electrode system. And you can see from that white paper that looking at the same responses, due to these advanced AI techniques that we've developed over the last 14 years, we're able to match about 90% correlation coefficient, depending on which markers we're looking at. For example, P300s, auditory steady state potentials, eyes open, eyes closed responses to what a full scalp EEG would be. And the way we do that is fairly simple. Well, I mean, it's simple to say, but it's essentially this. It's 4 pieces of IP that we've developed. One of them that was developed during my grad school years, which essentially enables us to boost the signal to noise EEG. Another one that enables us to infer data across the whole head, even though we're just recording around the ears. Being able to remove real-time artifacts, and then also to enable continuous calibration and QA, right? These 4 pieces of IP are what have solved these issues right here. We don't need sensors in the perfect location. We help solve the signal to noise. We remove the signals that disrupt everyday EEG signals. And our continuous calibration system enables us to essentially recalibrate dynamically so it can work across different brains. Like if I took this headphone and I gave it to you, within a few seconds, it would work just as well as it does on you as it does on me. And that's why whenever people see or use our demos, they see a one-to-one correlation of what they're experiencing versus what you would traditionally see from a lot of consumer neurotech, which is a line that bounces all over the place. And people are like, I don't know, is this working? Is this not working? And that's also why we don't have to do hardware. Because, in our opinion, you do hardware because no one's willing to buy your technology, right? So we instead license our software because people were able to boost the signal high enough that people want to integrate it into their actual products, right? And that pathway, though long, 14 years, right, is what has enabled us to really, what I believe is buck the trend of where a lot of BCI at the consumer scale have been stuck. And that's why we're getting such explosive growth with this consumer product that we partnered to release.
Yes, thank you for explaining that, because when I first time looked at that picture with the progression of the products, I was curious because I saw like a G-Tech cap, yes, in 2011, and then, other companies' products, and I was thinking, how is it related? Yes, are you working together? What's, collaborating? But now I understand you're building software and you can use it basically with any products, as I understand, yes?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we don't build any hardware whatsoever.
Okay.
We found that most hardware, even though a lot of companies tell us that their sensor is the best, we found that there's really just minuscule differences in signal to noise.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we've really focused on is how do we improve the software using AI to solve these 4 key challenges. And, we had to start with large gel caps. That's where our original models are from, and then work our way down. And it really took that long 14-year progression to be able to get to the state that we're in now.
Yeah, to downsize and the number of electrodes, but still receive that meaningful signal that you are using. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yes, very interesting, very interesting. And what about the information that you are getting from the brain? Yes, like I briefly mentioned, we are all used to having electrodes all over the head. Yes, ears would be the least place we would place any electrodes, unless they're reference. Yes, we would place on mastoids or so. What is that signal? Is there anything that can tell us about the brain that we can collect from around the ear? Yes, of course, the answer is yes. But what is that? Yes, what information are we collecting?
Yeah, and I think before I answer that, though, I want to answer a question that I think is tied to that I think is a really good start, which is like, why did we decide to do around or inside the ear, right? And especially when forehead is very good for signal, top of head is very good for signal. And the thing is, our company very much is on the premise of always thinking different, right? Because clearly what everyone is doing hasn't worked, right? If it has worked, it would have already been scaled technology, like neurotech would have already been solved, right? So we look at what solutions are out there and we purposefully don't do that, right? It's a very logical choice. So for example, we knew, and we actually have prototypes where we're using, electrodes at the top of the rim, or we have spiky electrodes around the ear, et cetera. But we said, let's not do that. Let's ask the customer what they would use. And so we actually created fake websites where people could go buy a neurotech product. And we had people go to those websites and essentially give us information as to why they would and would not buy it. And it turns out that the only product that they would buy was a product that looked like a normal pair of headphones. If there was spikes up here, they were like, what if I fall down and it hurts me and it stabs me? And we're like, well, they're soft. You don't have to worry about it. They're like, still, I don't want anything spiky in my hair, right? We tried different materials around the ears or other things like that. And essentially our choice was guided by what does the customer want, not what is best for EEG. And our goal was, okay, if we build what customers want and we take the gamble that we can solve that problem, then that tackles the biggest issue in getting this adoption curve to happen. And if we don't, and we fail on the way there, then I guess, we did our best and it is what it is. So we bet the company's success on saying that we're going to build what the customer would buy, not what's going to work for us. And that took a long time. I mean, we didn't get this technology out until 2023, right? That's from 2017 to 2023. That's how long it took to try to solve these problems, right? And then validate that there was good EEG. How does it work with hair? What about if people put on glasses? Like there's so many of these variables that we had to tackle. But the why was very important because we want to make sure we release a product people will buy. That's the most important thing, right? And so how do we get good signal from around the ear? It's very tough, and it all goes back to our IP. If you just look at the data by itself, it kind of just looks like noisy data, right? Especially because there's a lot of jaw movement around this area. You get a lot of infection, also the eyes moving around. You get a lot of artifacts that are in there. And so our 4 pieces of IP, one of them helps remove artifacts, another one boosts the signal to noise. And so when users pick up EEG from our headphones, they actually don't pick up the raw EEG. They pick it up post-analysis from our AI system. And that is what enables them to get really solid EEG that has enough data in there that they can actually run their experiments off of instead of just picking up the raw EEG and sending it through. So it really is the IP on our side that enables that product evolution and product development that can come from this type of hardware.
Yes, very impressive. And it makes sense, your choice definitely of using earphones, because that was one of the obstacles in general of neurotech adoption. People were saying, yes, we would love to use the technology, but we don't want to look differently from other people. Yes, and also people with certain disabilities, they were saying, no, we don't want to stand out. We already feel kind of uncomfortable. Yes, and we want to look like all normal people look like. And what the design, the approach you're providing, it is exactly that. Yes, we all wear headphones. That's absolutely normal. That even looks cool. Yes, they have nice headphones on, but they also work as BCIs. And so
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. That's so key. That is so key. It has to be normal.
Yeah.
Right. There's this concept called the anacrene effect where everything has to be good enough before it can be successful. And that's true with BCI. It has to look normal. It has to cost a good amount. It has to be performant enough. All these things have to come together before it can be successful.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And my next question is, I saw already several companies, no, at least one company. It was Apple. Apple
Hmm.
several years ago, and it was everywhere that they patented this technology of their earbuds, but having the EEG sensors on them, so you can insert them and start recording EEG. And probably as people understand that this really is something that people would do, people would wear this, there are more and more people who might try coming up with something like this. What is, do you think, your unique value that only your company is bringing that other companies do not?
Yeah, that's a great question. Really it comes back down to our four pieces of IP. They tackle the four biggest issues that have prevented scaling from happening. And there is a lot of incumbents in the field. What we've seen is that the majority of these incumbents are hardware based, right? And so we actually see them as potential customers. Do you want your hardware to work at a high degree of capability that it can actually scale a product? Cool. Come talk to us, right? We're really good at that. And we're working with a lot of different companies, global brands as well, to bring essentially Neurable powered products to the market. And I think that because we are such an easy direction to scale out and get good neurotech out there, it's given us a competitive advantage in closing these deals and bringing it to market and eventually create an ecosystem of developers that build on top of our tool and platform that continue to create a stronger mode as we move forward.
Do I understand correctly? For example, I am a producer of very good headphones. I
Hmm.
hear this conversation and I can contact you and said, Dr. Alcaide, um, I'm very interested teaming up with you. Can I purchase a license and use these EEG sensors with my headphones? Is this
Exactly.
how it works? Mhm.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And that's what our business model is. Our business model, is not to necessarily sell headphones. Our business model, we're not a headphone company at all, right? And we
Yeah.
never want to be a headphone company because it's tough. Like I don't want to compete against Apple, right? Like what we are is we are an AI company that essentially licenses our technology out to headphone makers and headwear makers. So I think this probably describes it best, which is we write software onto the chip that goes inside your devices. It can be a Qualcomm chip, it can be anything. And right now we're working with Master and Dynamic inside headphone form factors, but we're also form factor agnostic. Our technology can go in headphones, it can go into earbuds. For the DoD, we're seeing our technology be implemented into helmets,
Mhm.
right? And even hearing protection systems as well. But you can imagine future AR devices also have that technology inside. So we are essentially just software that boosts the brain signal so you can do real things with it. And we license across multiple brands and companies.
Mhm. Yeah, that is absolutely amazing. So basically, anything can have your technology integrated. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the large scale. Okay, wonderful. Maybe we can talk a bit because, of course, it's a podcast about careers. And
Mhm.
at the beginning of our conversation, you said that you are sending students my way or our Neurocareers podcast way, yes, so that they would listen and get some advice. But obviously, they're asking you for the advice first, yes, before you refer them. So, what are the most frequent questions you receive from students about their careers?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And honestly, like I feel it's always the same three questions. And if there isn't like 8 students that reach out to me per day, like something's wrong. It's crazy. Like my LinkedIn box is terrible. And that's why I like to send them your way because it's just, I gotta work on other things too, right? But I think the three biggest questions that I get is what should I be studying? Right. And this has become more prevalent now that AI is starting to get really big because, that question is changing. The second question is I want to understand like how I can get into the career space of neurotechnology. Um, what are the avenues for it? And then the third one is I didn't study neurotech. How do I get into neurotech? Right? Those are the three kind of biggest questions I get the most.
Yes, yes. And actually, now there is a perfect opportunity to answer them because then you even don't need to say anything. You can say, "This is the podcast. I answered all three of them." Um, would you like to do that? Can you answer first, of course, with the study? Yes, what should I study? And I agree. AI is developing, and we're integrating it more and more in neurotech and in tech in general. What is your recommendation in terms of studies for those who want to work with neurotech?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of biased and I could be wrong. In the next 10 years, I might be completely wrong because AI is changing this complete perspective. But what I used to tell kids is study the hardest, most difficult math and signal processing that you can. Like the harder the classes, the better. Like do hard things. Like so many individuals that I know are like, oh, I didn't do CS or I didn't do math because it's hard. And instead I studied like neuroscience and like biology. And it's fine, you can. But honestly, at least the work that we do at Neurable, it's like 5% neuroscience, 95% signal processing and machine learning, right? And I'm really fortunate that like it was painful to go through undergrad. Like it was the hardest thing in my life. I never want to do again. Like I don't even know if I would ever pick to be an electrical engineer again. Like it was brutal, right? But it was that brutal nature taking master's classes and and overloading an undergrad and taking I remember my professor talking about a 22-dimensional matrix, and I still wake up from nightmares from that lecture, right? But it's that complex mathematics that enables you to create AI, like not just implement, but create. And there's this giant dearth of capabilities for AI when it comes to the brain. We have all the standard stuff. All the standard stuff has been invented. Riemannian geometry is there, right? Neural networks are there. And once again, like our perspective is if everybody's doing it, it's not the right thing. So what we do at Neurable is we create solutions. We don't just take the existing tools. Obviously, we use classical tools and like, you know, filtering and classical machine learning and modern machine learning as well and AI. But we know that that's only going to get us as far as where everybody else is. And so our goal is let's use that as a stepping stone to do something that people are completely not even thinking about. That's always been our mentality. And so I tell people take the hardest classes so that you can take on those challenges, right? You're not a person, imagine trying to sail across the ocean, right? Or sail. You're not sailing to somewhere you're sailing to somewhere that's unknown. And you have to be brave enough to see the coast behind you disappear before you can start to see any coast in front of you. So because of that, you have to put yourself through, it's like a David Goggins mentality of how difficult of the stuff that you want to learn is. And that's where, and I think everybody on my team has that mentality. They've all studied really hard topics and are at the top of their game and they're working on things that nobody else is. And as soon as they start doing something that everybody else is doing, it's already company culture to be like, cool, I hope you spend a week on that because then you got to get back to working on things nobody else is, because that's where the real solutions are at. So what should you study? The hardest things you can that are mathematical, AI based. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And with also the difficulty, I've heard this expression that if you started feeling that it became easier, and in studies as well, it means you are going the wrong direction. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So really pick up hard things and work on them. And really what makes a difference. And today, actually, I had another podcast recording from the BCI Award awardees. They received second place in the BCI Award competition for 2024 from Dr. Collinger's lab at the University of Pittsburgh, Dr. Camille Gautier. And this, he absolutely was in line with what you are saying. He said first hard math, physics, and things that really, really are hard for you. It's easier from them to go to more health applications and things like of that nature, rather than you start with just neuroscience and health application and go backwards, and you still need to study math and physics and
Yeah.
engineering.
And I like to think about it this way, just to add one other thing, which is like,
Yeah.
what we're trying to do is break the world record, right? We're trying to break the world record, but not of somebody running a track. We're trying to break the world record of how seamless a BCI can be. We're trying to break the world record of how easy it can work across people, right? So that there's no calibration, individual calibration, for example. You're not going to break the world record by practicing times that are not world breaking, right? You have to be in that zone where you are pushing yourself to learn the math and the AI that is really hard, that is really painful, because you're not going to break the world record unless you have a world breaking mentality, right? And that's really something that's key.
Yeah, I agree. And probably you are using approaches that are tied to this in your recruitment process, how you're choosing people who will be working for your company. So what is your approach? Who are you looking for? And how do you make that determination that, yes, this person works hard, yes, or this person has that different mentality that can help push us forward.
Yeah, and I think that also touches on the second key question, which is like, how do I get a career in neurotech, right?
Yes.
So I'll answer that first part first of how to get a career in neurotech. Really, I mean, right now it's so early that most of it is signal processing and like and AI jobs. So that's what you should be studying. Yes, there are lawyers that work in BCI companies. Yes, there are HR people. You know, there's still a company, but those are very limited spots. And so the best way to get a career in neurotech is to work on the areas where there's more opportunity, right? And then just apply, obviously. But then the thing is, how do at least we recruit at Neurable, right? You know, at least for me, and whether you like Elon Musk or not now is beside this point. I'm not going to get political, but one of the best things that he said is that no one changed the world with a 40-hour work week, right? If you're going to work 40 hours, I don't want you at my company, right? We're every single moment you should be learning, growing. Like we are on, you know, this is a mission, right? And the mission either fits for you or it doesn't. It's as simple as that, right? Now, obviously, we want you to be great at technically, and we're looking for those one percenters, right? And you don't have to be the best of like the top of your class, right? You can be a one percenter when it comes to creativity. But the difference of what makes somebody 1% in the top 1% is whether they're willing to put the hours in. You know, if you have one of the best books that I ever read was called Outliers, and it's about how people became the best in the world. And the Beatles and so many other individuals out there, for example, they were great because they put in the hours. The Beatles played more than anybody else, right? Michael Jordan would shoot hoops, hundreds of hoops per day. Kobe Bryant would start his practices at 4 a.m. while everybody else started at 7 a.m., right? These are the people who are going to get their 10,000 hours in. And that's the whole premise of the book. Get your 10,000 hours in as soon as possible, and then work on something that market-wise has good timing. Now, market-wise, neurotech, the timing is finally here. Like we're seeing this huge inflection happening with our own sales and growth. I mean, we're growing at least 4 to 5x per year right now. It's crazy, right? But when it comes to finding the right people, it's are you that kind of person, right? Are you hungry? Are you humble? So you're teachable. And then on top of that, do you have good interpersonal skills? So you have those three things, and you have the mentality of being somebody who makes this your life mission to bring this technology to market. Those are the people we're looking for. And if it's not you, that's okay. Like there's a ton of other companies out there. It's just not Neurable.
What would you need to see on a person's application that would at least tell you, yeah, this person really stands out. I would like to talk to him, he, or them.
Yeah, if they have hobbies that are BCI related, if they took classes, or if they, went to events off of their, off time. But the real litmus test isn't on the resume. It's so easy to have a good resume, right? And it's so easy to be a good interviewer. That's a skill. Like being good at interviews is a skill. And so many people get hired just because they're good interviewers. Where I think our hiring process is different is at the very end of the hiring, you actually meet with me for 90 minutes. That's a long time. I have this belief that when you don't have anything else to say to each other, that's when the real conversations happen, right? And that's really why there's so much extended time. It's like getting to really know the person. Like, what are your hobbies? If your hobbies is playing video games, that's great, you know. But if your hobby is building BCIs or doing math, that's a Neurable person, right? Like if your hobby is learning a new skill, awesome. We want these creative people, right? If your hobby is hiking, that's fine. Maybe not a Neurable person, that's okay. But if your hobby is coding, creating, new web pages or trying out new things, like if you're just hungry for learning and you fill that void of yourself into every crevice that there is, that's a Neurable person.
Yes, and that's a very, very interesting thing that you mentioned, because I often suggest to people who want to get into space, but they still cannot do it for one or another reason, to start their own project. Yes, there are data and from speech neuroprosthesis that people can analyze, or they can create something on their own. There are so many ideas to develop the idea, to create software, and to showcase it to the potential employer, which I think demonstrates that the person is a self-learner, ignites themselves, yes, to do things. What do you think about that? About
Exactly.
people, yeah, who have.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Those are the kind of people we want. Are you a self-learner? Are you hungry to grow? Right. And those are the three things. Actually, we have an outline, a document that is like our Bible for hiring, essentially. And it's hungry. So you have to be really hungry to learn, humble, and good interpersonal skills. Like those three things, that's what we look for.
Excellent. Yep. Thank you. And I think there was another third thing that students were asking. If you can remind me.
It was about how do I pivot to
Yes.
neurotech if I can start
how do I
direction.
transition? Yes. Yeah.
And I think you touched on it, which is like you have to get embedded into the field, right? You have to go talk to people. Honestly, like just start applying. And there's so many career paths that lead you there. For example, maybe you didn't study EEG analysis, but you did study like whale music and like analyzing frequency transforms and et cetera for whales, right? And actually one of our scientists did do that, right? So the skills are interchangeable, right? You learn a set of skills. And if you don't have those set of skills or they're very niche, like for example, I had a friend of mine who wanted to go into product management for a neurotech company. And she's like, well, I don't have neurotech experience. Like it doesn't matter. Projects need to be managed, right? You're still going to be talking to people about, is this project on time? You're still going to be coordinating with stakeholders in the project, et cetera. Like it's the same skills. So don't play on the fact that you're not good at neurotech. Play on the fact that you're good at project management. Because the amount of neurotechnology that you're going to learn to do product management is going to be fairly small. Now, the amount of neurotech that you need to learn to create a new filter, that is going to be really high. But if you're not in neurotech and you still want to do a similar role, it's actually less than you might think. And it's the strength that you did build that you should be focusing on.
Yeah, I agree. I think people are overestimating the amount of neuroscience they need to know to work in neurotech in general. It's enough to have software development skills, yes, data analysis skills. And like you said, in your company, you're using about 5% of neuroscience, yes, and 95% of software development and similar things. So, and people make it a barrier, which I think is absolutely unnecessary. Especially there are other people on the team who can support and help, and people can learn about neuroscience. What do you think? How much of neuroscience in general people coming to neurotech companies should know to be successful at their
For
work?
sure, for sure. Let me actually find this quote real quick because I think it goes really well with this.
Yeah.
All right, I can't find it. It's okay. All right, so just ask that question one more time real quick. Oh, how much do people actually need
Yeah.
neurotech to be able to do?
Yes.
All right.
How much neuroscience, yes, they need to do work in neurotech.
So there's this quote, and I'm not going to get it right.
Yes.
But this was back when I was studying speech signal processing at the University of Washington. And the quote goes, "Every time I fire a speech pathologist, my accuracy goes up." Right. And it was a scientist, but basically what he would do is, he would fire one of his speech pathologists and then he'd bring in a computer science major in, right? And the accuracy of classifying the words went up. And the reason for that is because a lot of this that we do is at least on the EEG side is signal processing and it's mathematics and it's filters, right? And so the amount that you need to know, like where the signal came from and like what type of signal it is, these are things that you can learn as you go and overall are fairly teachable because we're dealing with things at a systems level, right? So very high level. We're not dealing with things at a very small like neurochemical level. We're not doing actual, tests on the brain directly, for example. And so it is very much more, data driven, or in the case that I spoke about earlier, role driven, right? Than it actually is neuroscience driven. Not to say that we don't use neuroscience, we do, and we have neuroscientists. But a lot of it is, for project management, it's managing a project. For signal analysis, it's doing Fourier transforms, analyzing the signal. It's those core skills that are really more important than knowing the anatomy of the brain. Like I had somebody who wanted to take an anatomy of the brain course. I'm like, you don't need that level of depth. Just, look at a picture of the brain, learn some of the basics. Like that's good enough. The signal is really what's going to drive the results of what we're looking for.
Yes, thank you so much. I think that's very important to know this to our listeners. Another thing that I noted, students are asking, should I go and do my PhD? And they want to work in industry, yes, or they also want to create their own startup. There are many students, probably you noticed, yes, that it's growing. Should I do my PhD? And what I noticed that some people are actually using their PhD to create already certain basis for their future products that they want to develop in their startup. For example, I was talking to Neuravili founder who is creating a space for robotics, interactions with the robotics. And he prepared almost everything that he needed to start that during his PhD. Today, you also referred to some things that you already built during your PhD that you are using in Neurable. So what is your take on that? How can you, should you pursue PhD if you want to do your startup? And how can you use your PhD time for your own benefit?
Yeah, neurotech is early enough right now that I personally do think you need a PhD, right? And the reason I say that is because we're not at the stage that we're creating engineering solutions now. Our team is working on that. We're simplifying things. We're enabling people to build devices and companies on top of our OS platform. But if you want to do something that is truly differentiated and solves a problem, right now I do believe you need a PhD. You know, I've seen a lot of students who don't have PhDs build BCI companies. They usually raise, about $1 million or $2. They end up building the same products that we already have on the market with the same performance, that has been lackluster. And it's because they didn't take the time to really understand the problem that existed in the field, which is what your PhD does, and then explore how to solve that problem. And until neurotechnology becomes more scalable from a development perspective, I do think that you need a PhD. We really only hire PhDs on our side as well.
And about using your PhD for actually building something that you can use then later in your startup.
Exactly, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
Yes. So in this case, you would recommend not just taking certain topic that is given to you, but rather looking for opportunities to already work on something that is relevant to your idea.
Yeah. And what I would say is not everyone is a startup person.
Yeah.
Not everyone is a, founder, right? You can be a startup person and not be a founder, right?
Mhm.
And not everybody else, and some people are fine with corporate jobs. It's not a problem. They're all perfectly fine career paths. But if you do want to be a founder of a BCI company, I think the PhD process, once again, gives you that framework of identifying a gap in the field. That's literally what your role is the first 2 years. Let me understand the field. What are the gaps? And then you're there to solve that gap. Now, whether that solution is something that is scalable or not really will determine whether you should scale it into a company or not. I'm in Switzerland here, for example, and I'm at this company that is doing essentially a system for connecting with non-invasive electrodes, right?
Mhm.
That is a scalable company. Like they're going to sell that to other individuals who make invasive BCI systems. That's awesome. But not every piece of research leads to scalable technology, right? And that's a whole separate conversation. Like, is this a hobby? Is this a large scale solution? Is this $1 billion solution? All of those are different types of businesses or no business, right? And those are the questions that you should be asking as you go through your program.
Mhm. And for those who are aiming to work in industry, because there are many people who now want to work in neurotech industry, what would be your recommendation for them to focus on during their PhD years?
Yeah. Once again, the hardest classes you can take. That's always going to be true, right? And then on top of that, I would just say understand the gaps in the literature, understand how to solve them, you know. And in my opinion, something that I don't think we do necessarily enough in the PhD program is how can you solve them in ways that aren't the standard ways. Like we use frequency transforms for everything. We use, Riemannian geometry. Like we use a lot of these classical techniques. We also use now neural networks. Um, but what else can you try, right? At least a lot of my PhD, and probably the reason why it took a little bit longer, and obviously the work that I did came out of my PhD program. The reason it took longer is because I also used it as an opportunity to try new things. Like the PhD is really such an incredible thing, right? It's like imagine somebody said, "Hey, I'm going to give you like 4+ years to essentially work on like whatever you want to a certain degree. It has to be within this scope, but you're going to become like the world expert on this, right? Like how often in your life do you have that opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Like we will pay you to solve this problem and it's up to you to figure out how to do it. Like that's a very rare and precious moment and opportunity. How you use that time is up to you. And if you get something out of it, that's all up to you as well too, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I had this experience when I was working at the psychiatric hospital as clinical researcher, clinical personnel, and at the free time, I was able to do my research, and then I came. To do my PhD, I came to this lab at the Helsinki University Central Hospital, and I had like the whole time And the whole time I was able to do my research. It was incredible. It felt absolutely incredible when you can compare, yes, how you were just trying to find some time for it. And here you have all this time just dedicated to this. It's an incredible opportunity. So I
Yeah.
absolutely agree with you on that. Thank you so much. And what was the biggest challenge in this whole process of building Neurable for you, and how did you solve it?
Oof, man, there's so many. Jesus, it also depends on. It's kind of like asking somebody, "What is your favorite restaurant?" It's like, you have to. If you know restaurants well, you're like, "Well, do you mean like Indian restaurant or do you mean like Mediterranean?" Like, so I guess I'll pick
Mhm.
at the highest level,
Yes.
which is it's that Neurable, like any type of company that does deep tech, I believe they go through this process, which is that the company dramatically evolves, right? And I feel like I've had to fire myself numerous times and rehire myself and get good enough to do the job. So at first, I was very much the engineer building the technology. Then I had to become a VP of engineering. Like I didn't know how to lead teams. That was completely new to me. So I remember spending every weekend reading books, calling mentors, being like, hey, how do I handle this interpersonal conflict of my employees? How do I, you know, manage essentially, an engineer that doesn't want to work on a task, right? Like they're not motivated by it. So it's a completely whole new set of experiences. And then fundraising, that's a completely different process, right? So I had to become chief fundraiser for a while, right? And then after that, it was less so about being a VP of engineering, but now being a chief science officer, right? And this company has gone through different stages. We started out as a group of students in a lab, to a company that does R&D, to then a company that builds a product. That's a completely different company, a completely new set of skills. And then now we're turning into a real like sales business organization. It's a completely new set of skills too. And every single time we get to that point, I have to ask myself, like, am I the best person to do this job? Right? If I were to pretend I wasn't CEO, who would I hire? Right? Who would do a better job than me? Should I just hire them? Should I fire myself? Right? And so what I do is I tell myself, this is what I'm going to do. This is the new Ramses that needs to be what exists at this company. I'm going to give myself 3 months, 3 months to become the best in the world that I can at this. And if I don't think that I can get the company where it needs to be, then I'm going to let myself go and hire somebody else. Simple as that. Right. And so, yeah, it's intense. While I walk, I listen to podcasts to learn new topics. Before I go to sleep, I'm reading something. Every waking moment of those 3 months becomes a 100% deep dive of like who this person needs to be to help this company succeed. And then even after that, I know I'm just good enough to barely be good enough, right? Like I haven't gotten my 10,000 hours in. And if you work 12 hours a day, it takes you 2.5 years to get 10,000 hours at anything you do, right? And so, that's the mentality that I bring to like how I need to be and grow to make sure that this company and organization be successful if I'm going to be the one leading it. And it's those pivots and those changes that have been, I would say, the hardest parts, at least for me personally.
Yes. Thank you so much. And our podcast is called Neurocareers Doing the Impossible. Can you recall any point in your life? It can be your career, building your business, when you thought that something is impossible, but you proved it to be possible. And how did you do that?
Oof, so many times, right? And there was some times that I didn't even know if we were going to exist. Like that's the truth, right? Like there's times where I've literally sat, I had this conversation once with my co-founder. We were in the boardroom and we had to do this major pivot because we integrated the technology into like a VR headset and we tried to scale it out there and VR never took off. And on top of that, like it still required moving the hair around. It was just a terrible experience, right? And so I looked at my co-founder, Adam Molnar, and I told him like, hey man, I think we need to go to headphones. And he was like, do we know if we can do that? And I was like, I don't know, man. Like a lot of our IP wasn't designed for that. You know, I looking at other headphones because our goal has never been to the first product to go to market. It's to be a product that works, right? So we saw other headphones and earbuds that were out there, and we're like, well, clearly those designs aren't working. That performance isn't working. So all signs point to this is a really hard problem that we need to solve, right? And right then, you know, I got essentially a moment of what I would call like weakness, right? Where I was like, maybe we can't do it. Like maybe this is impossible, right? And I remembered one of my favorite quotes of all time, right? It's from a guy named Patrick Lencioni. He is basically his book, Five Dysfunctions of a Team, is like our Bible at the company. And it reminded me of something that he said. And he says, it's not finance, not strategy, not technology. It's teamwork that remains the ultimate competitive advantage, both because it is so powerful and so rare. And in that moment, I realized that, first of all, I'm never going to get to headphones. A team is never going to get to headphones if we live in fear of even taking the risk of trying it. Like, I'd rather die trying than not try at all, right? And I have to trust on my team because that is our ultimate competitive advantage. Right? So we may not have the strategy on how to do it. We may not have the technology in this room right now how to do it. We may not even have the financing. At that time, we were definitely struggling for financing at the company. But it's that competitive advantage, and you just have to believe and put your faith in that. And honestly, it was like these incredibly beautiful, amazing people working tirelessly, 10-hour plus days, weekends, making this happen. There was no silver bullet. It was 14 years of lead bullets that led to the moment where we were able to release this product. But it was that gap that we had to jump many times now, and the belief that we can get there, and knowing that we're going to take that jump without a safety net.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And how do you see the future of wearable neurotechnologies? And how do you see Neurable fit that future?
I think that the future of neurotechnology is already here, right? It's headphones, AR glasses, earbuds. It can be a patch behind the ear. It's going to be transparent. It's not going to look different than what we have right now. The only difference is that the solutions that have been promised and to a large degree overhyped are finally going to start to come to market, and not in the way like I don't think we're going to get like thought to text, for example, with EEG non-invasively, et cetera. But there's ways of doing control with EEG that is very simple that could work with AR devices, right? And a really good analogy is that there's this fantastic book called How Innovation Works. And they basically said that, we get the solutions that we dreamed, but they may not always look like what we dreamed, right? For example, the teleporter. I mean, compared to somebody in the past, a plane is a teleporter. You wake up and you're a completely different place. The internet, the fact that I'm talking to you right now, that's teleporting my presence to you instantaneously, right? The replicator, having something that can replicate anything, that's software. Like I can literally copy and paste the file to you. So all these things that people dreamed about in science fiction are coming true. It may not always be the way that we think about it, right? Having those cool like computers on our wrists that you saw on TV, guess what? That's your phone, right? And so I think that the promises of BCI are possible. I just think the way we think about them is not going to be directly the way that we imagine them, but they're going to solve the same value proposition. And that's the most important part.
Thank you so much, Ramses. What is the best way to learn about your product? And maybe for some people already purchase it, and also to connect if somebody wants to collaborate and integrate in their devices the sensors or the software solutions that you provide.
Yeah, if you want to connect, just email hello@neurable.com.
Mhm.
We are continuously growing our portfolio of partners that we have with our technology that are going to be releasing them in the next few years. And if you want to see our company grow and what we're doing, we have a newsletter. You can just go to neurable.com. If you want to see some crazy fun things with neurotech, join my Instagram. We got a lot of fun stuff on there. And if I'm ever in your city and you want to do a collab, just hit me up. It's fun. That's how Travis and I met from eSpace. When we had a mutual friend, they connected us. Turns out that there was a way that we could work together, and now they're making smart spaces that are brain informed, which is really exciting.
Yes, I just recorded the podcast the other week with Travis, and we even talked about maybe we can do a podcast together with you after you already have final results of the studies that you did in eSpace, and discuss it. All three of us on our podcast. So
yeah, that'd be super fun.
Okay, yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. And we covered lots of questions today. I truly appreciate you giving answers and providing this amazing discussion. Is there anything maybe that we didn't cover, but you still want to answer it or to say something to our listeners?
I guess I'll just say one thing, which is that one of the most difficult points in time is identifying the right timing for technology, right? If you're a student out there, if you're, a collaborator, if you're a professional and you're trying to think about, is this the right time to get into neurotech? The answer is absolutely. Like, things are blowing up. You may not see it yet, and I was talking to one of my favorite content creators about this, which is like a lot of what's happening right now, people don't understand how big of a deal it actually is, right? It reminds me of like when AI first came out and we were watching like Will Smith eat spaghetti, and people were like, oh, AI will never be able to do video well. Look at how Will Smith doesn't even eat spaghetti well, and now look, it's only been 2 years, since some of these big evolutions in video are happening. And I literally, half of the ads I see on Instagram are AI developed ads, right? And they're really funny and they're really engaging. I think I might look at more AI content now than probably real content. I don't know. It's hard to see, right? That moment is happening with neurotechnology. And so if you want to get involved now, it's the perfect time, because you're literally building the foundation that is going to be what everybody else builds on to create the future.
Yep. Thank you so much. I absolutely agree with that. I wish you all possible success. I'm sure our listeners are joining me on this wish for you, for your company, and we will be looking forward to your updates. So thank you so much, Ramses. It's been a true pleasure. Thank you.